Hi, everybody. Um, I wanted to make this video for a long time, but I didn't know if I could early on because I was so uh, traumatized from my injury. But since it's coming up on a year, I think it's a good time to revisit what happened to me and to let some of you know what happened that day. I think it would be good for me, and I think it'd be good for you too, because not many people were there to witness my injury. And a lot of you who have supported me all these months um, were probably curious about how I got injured. And no one person was probably able to tell you everything that happened. But I can tell you everything that happened from my perspective and how I felt. And like I said, I think it'd be good for me mentally to let you know what happened. So let's get right into it. My injury happened November 7th, 2024, and I had just gotten done teaching my 7 a.m. class at Guerrilla Jiu Jitsu in Pleasanton. And like a lot of my classes, there's not a lot of people. It's usually like just a handful of people. And today there was even less. Today, my students were just Wendell and Lawrence. And Lawrence he's a white belt and had just come back after taking off for several weeks. So normally after class, I usually have the students spar with each other. But on this day after class, it was around 8 o'clock or so, I saw that Lawrence since he had just come back after a long hiatus, I didn't want to just throw him in and just roll with Wendell right away. So I decided to roll with Wendell just so that Lawrence can see and just try to get his mind and his body back into jiu-jitsu. Um, Once I started going with Wendell, uh, I, I tried going and staying on top right away. But with Wendell, that never happens. And I've rolled with Wendell many times in the past before my injury, and nothing ever happened. It's just a regular roll. So I thought this day was no different. But right away, I was swept, and I found myself in a bad position on the bottom, and I was on all fours. I went into the turtle position and tried to roll out of it because I knew that Wendell was going to try to take my back. So, um, as I was rolling out of it, my head and neck were on the ground, kind of sideways. And right when I began to roll, I felt a lot of pressure coming down from the top from Wendell's weight, and it caused my neck to give. So I was conscious the whole time. I heard my neck crack once or twice, and I felt like a real um, sharp sense of pain in my neck, which kind of went away real fast. But I was telling Wendell, you have to get off me. I think I'm in trouble. So he gets off me, puts the pressure off, and I tell him to put me on my back. And right when he puts me on my back, I know right away what happened. I had lost all feeling from the neck down, and right at that moment, I knew that that was my worst nightmare come true. Um, Wendell was holding my head just to keep it stable, keep my neck stable, while Lawrence, I might have told him to call 911 and tell him to get here right away. So I was conscious the whole time. Um, I think the longest, it felt like the longest I've ever waited for 911. They were probably maybe only there in about 4 minutes, but it felt so long. Um, when the paramedics got there, they were assessing me and asking me questions, and I was able to answer the questions. But one of the things I told them was that it felt like my head was disembodied from my body. Like I felt like my body was really, really far away, even though I knew it wasn't. But I didn't have any feeling from the neck down, and that's when they started getting me up, getting me ready to be transported. And I knew all the things that they were doing, putting me on a board, stabilizing my head. Um, I think around this time, I might have heard Ken show up because we were supposed to roll um, at about 9 or 8:30 after the class was over. But I get transported to the hospital, or actually, I kept telling him that I was a Kaiser member, but they said no, we have to go to the ICU, the nearest ICU, which was in Castro Valley, Eden Medical Center. So I remember the ambulance ride. Um, I remember telling them to call my wife to let her know what happened. And when we get to the hospital or the ICU, I remember getting wheeled into the ICU. Um, and my whole perspective from the time I get injured till even now, my whole perspective is laying down on a gurney or a bed and just looking up at the ceiling and everybody just doing their thing all around me. I wasn't able to turn my head, or at least they didn't want me to turn my head. So anytime someone would talk to me, they would just hover over me to let me know what was going on. But the whole time, I'm just dreading that what happened didn't happen, and just trying to keep myself from panicking about me not being able to move my arms or legs. So Lawrence had apparently followed me to the hospital, and he surprised me by showing up to the ER and talking to me and letting me know what was going on, which was great. Lawrence has been great since this incident happened. He's been a really good friend, and he told me that they contacted my wife, which was great. They gave me it was a huge sigh of relief that she was contacted, but I was also full of anxiety because I know that's not a call that she wants to get um, while she's at work. So as I'm in the ER, I can tell that they're prepping me for surgery. And I've never had any kind of surgery before, so I was really, really scared. Scared because I didn't know what was going to happen, and scared because I know my wife was probably in a panic right now, trying to find out what to do next for me. But I realized that surgery I was out for. They put me on anesthesia, so I was completely out. And um, even before then, right after the injury, I could tell that something was not right with me because not only was I paralyzed, I felt like I couldn't breathe or get a full breath. It felt like my lungs were at half capacity for some reason. And I kept trying to tell them things, but just ran out of breath. Um, but anyway, getting back to the surgery, surgery wasn't a big deal, it turns out, because you're out for it, or I was out for it. And it wasn't until I came to that I was told by the surgeon what my capabilities were as far as being able to walk or move or things like that. And that's when it really hit me hard. Um, he told me I was not likely to walk again. He was telling me that I'm likely to move my arms, but that I would have to work at it. But the worst part of all that news is being capable from before, you realize there's so many things that I wanted to do still that I don't think I ever could based upon what he was telling me. And that was really devastating. That took a while for me to process and to understand. Um, and I was under a lot of pain medications and other drugs to try to help stabilize my condition. After, I believe it was after, I needed a second surgery to re- reduce reduce my spinal cord, the bones in my spinal cord, so that my spinal cord could expand. I needed a second surgery for that. But somewhere around that time, I had to have a heart to heart talk with my wife because, just in case I didn't make it. Um, so I took a couple of minutes, and I don't know how long I talked to her, but it was one of those talks that you never want to have, whether she was going to keep me alive or not. I told her that if I needed machines to keep me alive just to let me go, I didn't want to live a life like that. I also told her I didn't want to live a life being paralyzed either. So I kind of gave her a little choice, but ultimately the decision was up to her, and she couldn't. She made the decision I think it was best for us at the time. So after the surgery, the second surgery, I didn't need the machine to keep me alive like that, just enough to keep my vital signs going, and eventually I'd be able to get off all these other machines. Um, but having that talk with her kind of made me feel a little bit better because I at least knew there was an understanding between me and her, and that if I did go, that in my mind I had done everything I could to provide for my wife and kids if I were to go. And that gave me a little bit of peace. So after the second surgery, I came out of it and was still on a lot of medication, but I think I was able to talk a little bit, um, because they eventually uh, put a tracheotomy tube in my throat so I could breathe better because I was drowning at some point, and that's why they put uh, the trach tube in my throat. Um, when I came out of it, I was still, like I said, still under a lot of medication, and was finally able to at least understand what happened to me, because that's when my wife told me what happened. Being under all that medication really affected me quite a bit, because I'm not I wasn't one to take drugs before I was injured, but during my injury, they gave me a lot of painkillers and a lot of other drugs that kind of clouded how I saw the world, um, from my eyes. Because although the hospital room was lighted and everything, in my mind, when I opened my eyes, everything was dark. All I would hear were sometimes just voices left and right of me that I couldn't see. And sometimes when I did see a person, it would just be like a black silhouette walking by. I could see their outline. I could tell who they were if they were a family member, but I couldn't make out any details. I was told later on at one point they were trying to put a tube in my mouth to try to get me to breathe better. And it felt like people were holding me down, trying to stick this tube in my mouth to get me to breathe. But once it got into my mouth, I started to chew on this plastic tube, trying to bite it off so that I could swallow the whole thing and get rid of it. It sounded like they were disembodied voices telling me and yelling at me not to bite the tube. Stop biting the tube. You're not going to be able to bite the tube. I found out later that um, there was nobody holding me down. I still couldn't move. And that I was just biting a tube, and they were laughing at me just trying to bite this tube that they knew I couldn't get through, that I couldn't bite off, and in a well lighted hospital room. So that's kind of how it went for a little while, for a couple more days, while while they were trying to wean me off some other drugs so that I can see clearly and think clearly. But that was all at Eden. Being at Eden um, Medical Center for maybe about a week and a half, that's when they decided to transfer me to Kaiser Antioch. And Kaiser Antioch was a long drive. I remember being in the ambulance to go to Kaiser Antioch, and I think at one point we were stuck in traffic on a Friday night, and since I needed pain medication, they had run out of pain medication about an hour into the drive. So I was not doing well, because I was in so much pain. So getting to Kaiser Antioch, after we got there and they gave me my pain medication, I felt better. And that's when I realized back at Eden that so many people had come to visit me. And like I said, I remember some of it, but when I recall who came to visit me, I could tell based upon your voice and your silhouettes that you were there, but I could tell no other details about it. I I couldn't tell what color shirt you're wearing or anything like that. But at Kaiser Antioch, I could at least start to tell who was coming by and what you actually look like instead of just silhouettes with like a glow, like a neon glow around you. So that's it for now. That's it for now, Denise.